What? Careers are a scam? What is this guy talking about? I did choose a provocative title intentionally, but the truth is that there are many aspects of having a career that are significantly oversold. Or at least that is my opinion. Having said that, there are situations and needs where having just that might be the right choice. However, it takes clear information to make a good decision on the subject. Hello and welcome to the Valiant Growth Podcast. My name is Philip Frey and today we'll be looking at the costs and the benefits of having a several decade long, highly specialized, non-entrepreneurial career. I must begin by giving fair warning. I am a young guy, I'm 23, and I have limited experience of the world that I'm going to talk about. I have worked around 7 or 8 months in an office environment at the beginning stages of the business career before deciding not to pursue it any longer. And these experiences are where I draw from, combined with a more theoretical understanding. I did interact with many people during my university education. I talked to a lot of managers. I talked to people who were taking their first steps in the world. I talked to people who were there for decades. I'm generally a curious person and I strike up conversations when I have the chance. So those are my influences. I still very much enjoy the subject of business management and all the creative and interesting ideas and tools that go into that. But the way most jobs are structured in this field makes them very unappealing to me. And I think the same ideas and principles really extend to a lot of professions, especially where it is something highly specialized and where you're an employee and not an entrepreneur. And it's especially true in the corporate world, though being employed in a small company doesn't necessarily change some of these realities. So at the moment, that's all the experience that I had in this world, and I'm really not looking to have this career. And after having left, I've been doing manual labor plus starting this podcast combined with a lot of self-knowledge work. So you may take everything that I say with a grain of salt. So what are the issues that I see? Let me hit the nail on the head right at the beginning and tell you about my biggest problem. The issue is that careers are often sold as great tools of personal development. Sometimes the only path to that is shown to young people or that society really accepts. I've seen ads recently about how going with this or that company and starting a professional career with them will bring you confidence and will help you become someone. And as a person deeply interested in the subject of personal development, I take great offense at these promises because they are straight up lying and they're not delivering what they are promising. I don't think it's some kind of corporate conspiracy or anything like that going on. It's more likely people just using ideas that are appealing to the mass market and also in a way justifying their own choices. But let's look into it. The most obvious and clearest benefit of learning a profession is the technical skills that are built associated to it. In many ways, those will be producing the greatest value and will be responsible for most of the income that you get. And that's not necessarily technical in nature. For instance, if you're trying to be an excellent customer representative, you have to build skills that are more in the soft skills category, or that's how they're usually called. But it doesn't really make a difference for my argument. So there are some side benefits involved in developing these skills. But the problem is that being a good professional doesn't make you a wiser person or a better person or a person who is more suited to finding happiness. Yes, you are creating value, but let's look at the price of that value. Building technical skills takes up a lot of time, and especially if you're going into a highly specialized field, you're going to be investing a great deal of learning time, which is not only time lost, but it's highly valuable time lost. I don't think most people are capable of learning for more than a fixed number of hours per day. So that's a really unique resource that you're spending on building technical skill. And usually that will happen outside of your working hours. And if you're in a professional career, that's already 40, 50, 60 hours of your time. And then to be really on the leading edge and to be really good, you will have to invest pretty heavily in what's left of your free time as well. And that is very valuable time that you are not spending on self-knowledge, on improving your relationships and your relationship skills, clarifying your personal goals, learning to manage your personal finances, or in general picking up more flexible skills that will help you more generally and even after you stop doing the work that you're doing. The moment you retire or quit or the industry goes down the drain, hundreds to thousands of hours of specific knowledge become unusable. Think of programmers here who have to learn new languages every decade to stay on top, probably even more frequently now. And yes, you've learned core principles, and yes, there are side benefits, but still, a good chunk of that time is just lost. My belief is that you could be much happier and much more fulfilled by being a mediocre professional, but a person of deep wisdom, of self-knowledge, of psychological understanding, a better parent, a better partner, a better friend, than a leader of his field in his area of specialization who does not have these traits. It's not necessarily bad. It's not a negative on your life to allocate all this time to learning these skills, these technical skills, but I see it as a misallocation of resources. If you look at the big picture of what you're aiming for, and being a good professional is only a chunk of that, you might find that investing time into other skills will give you more over the course of your lifetime. You might say, I'm learning a lot of good skills on the side as well, so it's really a more nuanced investment, and I'm missing the point here. So for instance, let's say you want to be an entrepreneur, but you don't have the sales skills. So you might take up a sales job to learn those skills in a more safe environment, perhaps to benefit from a training program. Oh, and also you're generally a shy person, and that is something you wish to overcome, and you want to build some courage. So this aligns very well with the bigger purposes of your life. And that is a very sensible argument. If the way in which you're being challenged by your work actually aligns really well with your big picture goals that you have defined, and you know that these skills will serve you for a long time, that is not bad. The only issue is, working in these environments, you will still be spending a lot of time on routine things. And the times when you're really stretched will be a pretty small percentage of your overall work experience in most cases. Companies are not in the business of making you grow, although some of them claim otherwise. And therefore there's a lot of repetition. If you're very good at something, it might make more sense financially to have you repeat doing that thing where you're very good, rather than invest a lot of time and energy and resources into helping you stretch out something else, where in the end you might find out that you're not very good or you're not even interested in it. And especially in early careers, it can be very routine, and you're missing out on building skills that are much more impactful in that phase of life, and that could benefit you a lot more, such as lifestyle design, personal finances, choosing/earning the right people in your life, the right partner, healing from trauma. Having those skills nailed early on will be much more beneficial than whatever stretching might happen in your career, whatever skills you might build in your career. You might say, okay, but I'm learning people skills. I'm learning the ways of the world. And that is, again, a very reasonable argument, and it might be the right choice for a certain phase. The problem is that what usually is behind that is learning to appease difficult people. The term people skills often mask learning to survive or thrive next to people that you don't really want to be spending time with. And you have no control for a long time as an employee of a company of who you're working with. You might become more senior and gradually get some influence, but for a lot of time you will not be choosing them, and you will also not be choosing your clients, your suppliers, generally the people you interact with. And even if you're at a very productive and very successful company, psychological health, empathy, morality, they're not always correlated with productivity. There's so many famous entrepreneurs out there who were extremely successful, extremely productive, gave a lot of value to the world, but who were really abrasive and just generally terrible bosses to be around. And not only that, but they went through divorces, they had very unstable personal relationships. So there is some correlation, and being a nice and tolerable person will help you in your business career. That is undoubtedly true, but there's no guarantee. Okay, so you might say, look, this is a fact of life. You just have to deal with difficult people, period. So you might as well get a job where you learn those skills. To some extent, that is true, but you probably have more control over how much depth these people have, how much interaction you have with these people than you think. Yes, you will bump into crazy people on the street. Yes, you will have, as an entrepreneur, difficult clients. Yes, there will be people in your social clubs that are difficult. But do you have to be friends with these people? Do you have to invite these people in your house? Do you have to spend 40 to 60 hours per week with them in your workplace? Is your destiny uniquely tied with these people? The same way that it is if you're working for a company? Well, once you exit that paradigm, you really significantly increase the level of control you have. And the terrible people around you might do everything to normalize it and to paint the world as a place where being abused and being treated poorly is just the norm, but that is not the case. You can have control. So what if, instead of learning how to placate and live with 40 to 60 hours per week with these people, what if you learned to find better people? What if you learned to be the person that attracts more quality, more empathy, more honesty, more morality, whatever you're looking for, better support, more respect, more boundaries? I personally have, in the last years, really increased the quality of the people in my life by becoming a better person. And it's night and day. And I also know people who have radically changed their social circles and are now on the way to rebuilding a support network and a friendship network that is composed of much better people, much healthier people, much more pleasant people. But getting there takes a lot of learning, which takes a lot of time, and it also takes gaining control to some extent over your time. It can be a step-by-step process. And you're unlikely to have this level of control in your professional career where you can really make meaningful choices about who you're surrounded with. Next argument, you might say, okay, but all the money is there, and getting a serious paycheck and getting rich takes creating a lot of value, and you can only create a lot of value if you really specialize and you really focus and you really learn in that you're doing. All true, but without learning personal finance, without learning how to save, how to invest, how to ensure your wealth, the experience of a lot of people is that they just managed to dig deeper holes because they had access to more credit. And we'll talk more about personal finances in the following episodes of this show. It's not really something that I've gotten around to yet. Also, from a psychological perspective, if you're self-medicating with spending your money or the things that it can buy you, and by that I mean, to really simplify it, if you're trying to fill a gap inside of you, if you're trying to meet unmet needs through spending, instead of earning less but learning how to heal this trauma, money will just get you into more trouble. Look at the lives of many celebrities and you will see how earning a lot has only enabled them to escalate this kind of behavior, to buy the better distractions. And as long as these things aren't healed and aren't resolved, as long as you have these compulsions and you don't know their roots and you haven't worked with them, your wealth and financial stability is at a permanent risk. It is very, very fragile. Doesn't matter how big the numbers are. And to repeat the theme of the show, getting there takes time and learning, and time and learning is a very rare and precious resource. So there's a trade-off there. And again, earning a lot of money, there's nothing wrong with that. It's great, and it's absolutely preferable. More is preferable to less if you don't have to pay a higher price in other areas of your life. You just have to look into it and see if the trade-off is worth it. There are extreme examples on the other end where you don't get out of bed because you're 100% focused on self-knowledge and you just grab a book and meditate and slowly starve to death. That is not what I'm aiming for. You must find a working middle ground that is useful for you. Another aspect that is important here is an idea brought up in Early Retirement Extreme, which is an excellent book that I will review on the show, is that building skill in spending or building skill in frugality can have a much higher return. And focusing on that can very quickly slash your living expenses without decreasing the quality of your life. And thus you can free up some time to do more self-knowledge work and more learning, more growth. Okay, so you might say, yes, Philip, that all sounds great, but I'm looking for stability. That is where my risk tolerance is, or that is the phase of life that I'm in, that I have people depending on me. And having a corporate job and a clearly defined profession is a very cushy situation to be in. To some extent, again, that is true, that is very true. And being an entrepreneur or doing something more radical with your lifestyle is a more up and down kind of experience. On the other hand, the argument is often made that if you're an employee, you basically have one very big client. And if anything happens to that client, you're in trouble. Whereas if you're more entrepreneurial, you have a lot more sources of income, and there is a significant stability in that. Also, another trade-off in this field is that the more highly specialized your skill, the greater risk you face if, for whatever reason, that skill becomes obsolete in the future. And this is happening basically every day in today's economy. I read a book some time ago on people in the oil industry, for instance, and they are extremely dependent on the oil price and what the demand is at any given time. And they will often be going from extremely wealthy to super broke just based on geopolitical events and inventions and standards. And that applies to other fields as well. On the other hand, if you have more broadly applicable skills, such as plumbing, being able to do electric work, being able to do household repairs, you are very, very shock resistant. And especially if you're worried about great societal changes and coming instability, which you may or may not be, having broader skills is a much better insurance. Okay, you might say, that all sounds great, and okay, more time for personal development, but how do I earn my money? How do I build my lifestyle if I'm not going for a career? Does this mean that I have to be a minimum wage employee? How is that realistic? What are actionable steps into gaining more time freedom and seeking personal development in other ways than through careers? Well, in the next podcast, I'll be reviewing a book called Job Free that looks at some very interesting alternatives and paths to achieving financial independence, which you can then use to really boost your growth. Also, all this being said, you might find that in your unique circumstances, a career is indeed the best option. You might have a low risk tolerance, you might have people depending on you, you might not be overly enthusiastic on treading crazy new paths, and you don't necessarily have to be. That is a question of personality. You might like the prestige that comes with the job. You might actually like the people that you're working with. You might not want to take the risk of people who've encouraged you to go on this path, condemning you and distancing themselves from you. You might be doing something that is a career, but that is truly very meaningful to you, and it is your life's calling, and you derive immense satisfaction, and you're not just there punching in, punching out, and trying to time travel between those two events. In that case, the costs and the benefits change. But my aim really is for you to take a good skeptical look on how careers are advertised and be mindful of the benefits and the drawbacks. And what this choice leads you to is a highly personal question, and I trust you being the best person to make that choice. Thank you for listening to the Valiant Growth podcast, and I dare you to flourish today. You can subscribe for more content on our Facebook page, facebook.com/valiantgrowth, or by signing up for email alerts at valiantgrowth.com.